Hello everyone, welcome to the best alien comic book stories out there, according to me. On some of my other Aliens videos, a couple of people have said I should really take a look at the comic books because there are so many great ideas for the upcoming movies that are in there. Some of them have been used already, some of them haven't. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go have a look, and yes, the comic books are awesome. So here are what I consider to be the 3 best, and I highly recommend you can check them out. Here we go, the top 3. Try to imagine like Castaway, but instead of Tom Hanks, you've got Morpheus from The Matrix. And instead of just a normal island, the island is like the alien jungle from Avatar. And then throw in a xenomorph for good measure. That is pretty much Salvation. The story starts off, a cook who is extremely religious, almost to the point of being a full-on zealot. Like everything he says is about religion. And there's an unexplained disturbance on the ship, and the captain grabs him, stuffs the 2 of them into an escape pod, abandons the rest of the ship, and lands on a planet where there's only one island on this massive ocean. So they're essentially stranded at sea with a xenomorph loose on the island. It's written by Dave Gibbons, who was one of the writers of Watchmen, so you know you're getting a pretty good story there. It does actually have an echo of the pirate story that you find in the Watchmen comic, here in Salvation. But what's cool about this is it's really cool to see this whole drama with the xenomorph through the lens of someone who doesn't know the bigger picture, doesn't know anything about Weyland-Yutani or anything like that, and in fact through his lens, the xenomorph is like the incarnation of a demon. He actually thinks it is a demon. And I think that works because there's always been a sort of subtle subplot with the first Alien movie that the xenomorphs kind of represent like the bad side of humans, the darker side of humans. They're kind of like a symbol for that. So the battle in this between him and the xenomorph is very sort of Predator-like. And I really like the idea of getting the xenomorphs out of these enclosed areas. I mean, naturally, since it's in space, it's always like inside a ship or inside a base. Let's get them outside. Let's get them in an alien jungle. A different setting, I think, if they carried it over into future Alien movies, would be a good thing. This was made back in the 90s, and stop me if this sounds familiar. A group of like space-like archaeologists find some coded information carved in ancient artifacts on Earth that leads them on this space journey to find out who these engineer-like beings are and what they have to do with humanity and possibly even the meaning of life and the meaning of the universe. And they find out a dark secret about the xenomorphs. Yeah, you get it. It's Prometheus. This is basically Prometheus before Prometheus. And naturally, the movie did copy certain elements, like them in the spacesuits, and there's even a scene where they take their helmets off just because the air's breathable without checking for germs, just like they did in Prometheus. And it's, as a story, it's serviceable, you know, it has all the sort of alien tropes of people walking around in their underwear and all this sort of stuff. There's a few elements that don't work, however. They bring in like a spray that covers up their scent, which makes them invisible to the xenomorphs. I don't like that at all. It's really kind of like a king-size trump card for the aliens. I mean, if you can just become invisible to them, it really removes the threat. So in that way, really don't like that. And also, much like the movie Prometheus, by the end of this comic, it doesn't really answer anything. I mean, like in this, I suppose I can spoil it, doesn't really matter. They don't call them space jockeys, they don't call them engineers, they just refer to them as giants, because in the first Alien movie, remember, the engineer there was really tall. It was a very big creature. It was a giant. So basically the idea is that these giants were like the spacefaring race before humanity, and that the xenomorphs popped up and sort of wiped them all out. And now that they've died out and humans are now the spacefaring civilization, the xenomorphs have popped up again to wipe us out. So the implication is that the xenomorphs, they're not made by the engineers. They're supposed to be like a natural response of the universe to sort of keep us under control kind of thing, like part of the cycle of creation and destruction. That's what they're implying, but they don't fully explain it in any way. And there's a hybrid creature at the end, which really sucks. It's like a mesh between the xenomorph and the space jockeys. I mean, we got that in Prometheus too. This one is basically just a giant-sized xenomorph. It's not very good, but the reason I say it's good is because the one thing that I really do like that I would like to see them carry over is rather than this being told from the perspective of Weyland-Yutani, it's actually a different organization called Giholgod, organization. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's in written form. You never know in comic books how names are pronounced. But this organization they're basically scientific Puritans. They really believe in scientific discovery purely for the knowledge and not for the profit. Of course, Weyland-Yutani's all about the profit. So they're like a rival company for Weyland-Yutani, but like their philosophy is far over on the other extreme. So far on the other extreme that they're almost like, fanatics themselves. They're like scientific fanatics. That, I think, is a really cool new angle that they should bring in a future Alien movie. And one of my favorite scenes is they actually anticipate that a member of the crew could possibly be a synthetic sent by Weyland-Yutani trying to infiltrate them. So as they're flying away from Earth, they fly past a Weyland-Yutani base and they send out a certain signal that just scrambles synthetics. And a member of the crew who is a synthetic, who was one of these sleeper agents, his head just explodes. So it works really well. It's cool to see that it's like one step ahead of what people already know for the movies. I think this is my most favorite one. Even though in this some of the dialogue is very, very cheesy, but by far my favorite of all of the comics so far. This is the one I recommend that people read the most. First of all, let me set the stage for you. Some of these elements carry over to Alien Resurrection in that it's a spaceport, like a mobile space station out in space where they're doing experiments on the xenomorphs. However, in this one, there's only one human scientist and everybody else around him, all the other people who work there, are synthetics, which makes so much sense. Because of course, if we're experimenting on xenomorphs, don't have humans around because, face huggers and all that, the face huggers can't reproduce with synthetics. So of course. And besides, if a synthetic gets ripped apart by a xenomorph, doesn't matter. But particularly I like there are two xenomorphs. There's one called Dean, who is a synthetic created specifically to take out xenomorphs. So he's basically like a giant T-800 style destroying machine. He's got like all the firepower packed into him and he's just built of solid armor and he just mops the floor with all of these xenomorphs and it's really, really cool. On the other hand, there's another synthetic called Jerry, and Jerry is a synthetic that's made to look and move and even smell exactly like a xenomorph. So he looks like a xenomorph, sounds like a xenomorph, smells like a xenomorph, but he's a synthetic, and they made him so that he can like go into the hives with the xenomorphs and move around and for like research purposes, get information on them and stuff like that. But he's a synthetic. And this lends itself to a lot of comedy because the only way that Dean can tell the difference between Jerry and a real xenomorph is that Jerry can speak English. So Jerry's constantly afraid that Dean is going to kill him, thinking that he's a xenomorph, and it leads to a lot of really good comedy. There is good comedy all the way through this. That's one of the great things about this comic book. There's not much in terms of the scientific research. The idea is just that the scientist, he's like the crazy scientist. He's trying to come up with a virus that can wipe out the xenomorphs, but in reality, he's like doing black market deals with xenomorph parts and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of generic. It's not really that special. But yeah, what makes it special for me is it really delves into the relationship with the synthetics with each other and also how they interact with the xenomorphs. And I've always found that a very interesting part of the Alien movies. Like, we are absolutely terrified of the xenomorphs, but for the synthetics, they obviously don't have fear of death because they're machines. So it's more just curiosity with the xenomorphs. And I've always found that dynamic between them to be really cool and really interesting. And it's something I want to see more of. Like in the next movie, if they have like a crew that goes out to find the xenomorphs and they're all synthetics, that would be really cool. That's something I'd love to see. And it delves also into part of their programming of that.
It is impossible for me to harm or by a mission of action allow to be harmed a human being. You sure you don't want some?
And I also especially like this one scene where there's a big sort of Gangs of New York style showdown between this whole group of xenomorphs versus this whole group of synthetics, and it's really, really cool. I would love to see something like this in live action. So there you have it. 3 of what I think are the best comic books in the Alien series. You guys were right. Yes, there's lots of really fantastic ideas in there that they should mine for any future movies. So let me know what your favorite comic is if you're into reading the Aliens comics, or whether you might check them out online. I am Bandit. This is Bandit Incorporated. Until next time, I will see you guys in the comments.